All right. Okay, so welcome everybody to Christie Speech Therapy. I am Christie Tsang and I am a speech and language therapist. And I have the honor of hosting two Makaton trainers from the UK, Mrs. Sarah Norman, a highly specialist speech and language therapist and also a senior Makaton trainer, and my former colleague, Mark Lovegrove, who is a Makaton trainer as well. So the goal of these little videos is to raise awareness about, first of all, to advocate the speech and language therapy field, especially in Mauritius. As some of you might know, I have spent the best of the last 10 years studying, volunteering, and working as a speech therapist overseas in Australia and in the UK. And I just came back to Mauritius, and it's kind of a new field. So the goal of these videos is to raise awareness about what the scope of speech and language therapy is to the Mauritian community, but also internationally, what we do. And secondly, it's to make speech and language therapy more accessible to the Mauritian community, because there are not many of us in Mauritius, and it can be quite expensive to go overseas to seek treatment. So the goal of these videos is to bring the experts to us. So we'll try to, the main topic today is Makaton, and we'll try to tie everything up in 45 minutes. And then at the end, we'll have about 10 minutes of questions that you can ask by using the chat box. And if ever we don't have enough time to answer all the questions, you can either email me or inbox me on Facebook, and I will send the questions to Mark and Sarah, and then I'll post the answers on Facebook, or I'll just message you back on email. And that's it for me. So straight onto the questions. Sarah and Mark, can you both give us a brief description of your work experience with special needs children, your current job title, and your special interest in Makaton? And for Sarah, I know that you have some work experience internationally for Makaton. Can you tell us a little bit more about this as well? You have the floor, Sarah.
Oh, right. Ladies first. Sorry, Mark.
It's all right, no problem.
Okay. Yes, I'm a speech and language therapist. I worked for the NHS in the UK for many years. I'm going to leave it vague. And I've actually retired from my NHS work. So I do some independent work as a speech and language therapist, and a great deal of work for the Makaton charity itself now. So that's really what I'm up to at the moment. Yes, I was involved very luckily with taking Makaton to a couple of countries. So Italy was the first one.
Oh, wow.
And then South Africa, which is probably more interesting to you because obviously South Africa is multicultural, multilingual, several different languages, and in fact 9 different natural sign languages in the country, which all had to be taken into account when introducing Makaton to South Africa. So it was a fascinating adventure, really, taking it there. We had a Makaton tutor, an English lady who had lived in South Africa for a long time and was passionate about Makaton and had introduced it and was pretty much the sole leader using Makaton in South Africa, which is a daunting prospect. But she trained over here, and she knew that she would need to train people up so that she could spread it out further than just herself trying to deal with everything. And so, yeah, we did a great deal of work, did two lots of training out there. We've got a group of Makaton tutors now in South Africa, and about to do a second round of tutor training at the end of next year, which would have been this year, but obviously hasn't been. But hopefully at the end of next year, they'll have another group of tutors out there. And I know we're going to talk about the cultural issues a bit later on, so I possibly won't go into any more than that here, but it was really, really interesting. And yeah, we can talk about all the language issues a bit later on, maybe. All
right, brilliant. I hope that you'll be able to pop by Mauritius as well when you are delivering the training in South Africa. You know,
sounds good to me.
Yeah,
I would need an assistant, of course, another tutor with me.
No problem, no problem. All right. Now, Mark, can you tell us a little bit more about your work experience with special needs children, your current job title, and your special interest in Makaton, and your journey to becoming a Makaton trainer? You have the floor.
So, hello, I'm Mark Lovegrove. I first used Makaton, crikey, at least 20, if not more than that, years ago. And Sarah actually taught me a very, very long time ago, my first ever hesitant steps in Makaton. I currently work in the service that Sarah recently retired.
Mark, can you speak louder? Nadine can't hear you. Yeah, much better now.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I've used Makaton for many years, and I still work in the service that Sarah recently retired from. So I'm working in the NHS in the UK for a children's therapies team based in the community. I use Makaton more or less on a daily basis, really. I more or less sign with everybody I work with, and colleagues and friends and family too. So it's very, very second nature to me. My current job title is an integrated therapy assistant, because we cover all three disciplines: physio, occupational therapy, and speech therapy as well. And we go out to children's homes, school visits, nurseries, preschools, and so on. And we use all the tools at our disposal, including Makaton, to support those three disciplines. My special interest, as you referred, is certainly Makaton. Has been something that I've wanted to develop, and it certainly took quite an extended period of time, because I did an introduction to it with Sarah a long time ago, as I say. And then while I was working in a special needs school some years ago, I started picking up some more from other speech therapists. And then since coming to work for the NHS, I've actually trained formally to become a tutor, and ended up about 4 or 5 years ago. I did a residential course for a week, and actually became a regional tutor. So, but I believe that label no longer applies. It's we're just tutors now. But it's great to be a tutor. And it's just been a bit sad of late, because we haven't been able to see so many people face to face. We're looking to get this up and running certainly early next year, with some online training courses and workshops.
That would be lovely, especially if we can have access to it from Mauritius.
Very much so. Yes, that would be
Yeah.
fabulous.
Fun little fact for those listening, Mark was my Makaton trainer and Sarah was Mark's Makaton trainer. So we have like 3 generations here.
Oh dear.
All right. So Mark, what is Makaton exactly?
Exactly. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the phrase that they use on their website and what they like us to say is a unique language program. It's unique because there's nothing else out there that does the same, utilizes the same tools. There are other things that use similar tools, but only Makaton uses signs and symbols in a sort of a total communication sort of approach. It also encompasses and encourages the use of facial expression, your posture, gesture, as well as signing, and it's different to the natural sign language in each country because we speak in spoken word order. Sorry, we sign in spoken word order along with the speech. So yes, as I say, it's a unique language program because it's unique in that respect. It's a language program because it has those an assortment of tools, as I say, to address the development of early language, as well as some more complex concepts as the child develops or the user develops their understanding, and needs more things added as you go. It's very you can dip in and out of different areas of the additional vocabulary lists to pick up the extra bits and pieces you need as you go. But there are 2 main vocabulary lists. There's a core vocabulary, which is taught across the board to all, and very much has the signs and symbols, the concepts that people require, on a daily basis, and you can then add to that using additional vocabulary lists, of which there are many thousands of extra things. But in the core vocabulary, there are 450 or so concepts, which include a number of so there's pronouns, there's verbs, there's adjectives, and plenty of nouns, so that you can begin to communicate even at sentence level very quickly, and meet your needs using as much as you can of the tools that are available to you. Is that sufficient?
Yes.
Yeah. There is you did request a little bit of research, and there are research papers on the Makaton website, which and there's a number of them, but they're quite specific in as much as they cover an array of different things from the last 40 or 50 years.
Okay. So we can
honest,
send me the list and I'll
best,
post it a bit later.
Yeah, to have a look at those, specifically to the areas you're interested in.
Okay. I'm just aware of the time because we have lots of questions to go through.
That's fine.
So back to Sarah now. Sarah, how does Makaton differ from typical sign language?
Okay, they are 2 completely different things. Obviously, sign language is aimed at a different audience, really, at the deaf population, and a sign language is a naturally developed language amongst the deaf population. It's an ever-changing language, and should be thought of as we think of other spoken languages. So, for instance, if you were to learn Spanish, you have to learn the vocabulary, you have to learn the grammar, you have to learn the word order that you would say it in, and that's exactly the same with a sign language, where they have a different word order because they're not using speech, they're just using the signs and the gestures and all the visual elements that Mark mentioned there. but they do have their own rules, and you should think of it as a language.
Mm-hmm.
It also means that they have dialects, just like you have dialects in spoken language, so that signs in one geographical area may be completely different from signs in a separate geographical area, even though they all come under the umbrella of that particular sign language. Makaton is different because we use it alongside speech, and generally it's used with people who do have some hearing. But as a result of it being used alongside speech, you always use it in the same word order as normal spoken language, of whatever language you're speaking. And in order to reduce complexities, we get rid of dialects, such that if a user of Makaton was to move geographically, they should be able to pick up and use their Makaton in any geographical area within that country, because the signs will have been standardized and the dialects reduced. So basically they're the differences between the two, really.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. Just so that people understand what you mean by word order, can you give us an example of something you would say in Makaton versus how you would say it in sign language?
Okay, so the spoken sentence, I'm going to work tomorrow. That's how you would say it in English. I am going to work tomorrow. And in Makaton, you would add key signs. You don't sign every word in the majority of cases. You can sign at a high level if you need to, but generally you would only sign keywords. So you would sign, I'm going to work tomorrow. And those signs would flow along with the same order of your spoken language. In British Sign Language, which is the only one I can quote to you, I'm afraid, they wouldn't be using any speech, so I'll sign it silently to start with, and then I'll tell you, or perhaps you'll pick up from what I've already signed. They would go in one dialect. There may be differences, but they would go, so that word order was tomorrow, work, I go. So the word order is the time is first, time concept would be first, and then the subject matter of what you're about to talk about, and then you add on the other information. So as you can see, you can't really use sign language with speech, because their rules are different. So their word order is different.
Okay, very interesting. Moving on to the next question. It can be either Mark or you. How does Makaton work? I think you've answered a little bit about it anyway. Mark, do you want to answer that one?
I think Sarah has covered,
She's covered it.
A big chunk of it with the fact that it's the spoken word order is perhaps the key thing there.
All right.
But it works, as we've also mentioned already, by using an array of tools altogether. So it is expression and body language, as well as the symbols themselves for the concepts and the signs. You do have to be a bit of an octopus and try and
do everything together
all at once.
Yeah.
But the more you portray a concept with your whole body, and whilst the symbol is available too, the more accessible it is, and the better it helps retention and then obviously use of that concept back.
That's right. Okay, so next question then. Who uses Makaton? Who is it adequate for?
Well, as I say, I use it very routinely, and there are a number of the signs which are kind of they're just generally in use today. A lot of sort of directional when you're pointing for going and up and down and here and there and you and me, and a number of similar concepts are virtually what you would do by way of gesture naturally anyway, which is part of the beauty of it. But specifically, the charity suggests that there's over 100,000 people using it.
In the UK?
I believe so, but it might be bigger than that. I'm not sure. Sarah, do you know if that's just the UK?
I'm not sure whether that figure covers everybody, but it is a huge number, certainly.
Yeah, yeah. I could quite envisage it being just the UK. In fact, I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Yeah, I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
Yeah.
And that encompasses adults as well as children. It covers, excuse me, it covers a great array of people with a variety of different needs and to some degree none. It's used in all sorts of settings, from residential settings, as I say, to nurseries, schools, mainstream environments, as well as SEN, special educational needs environments.
Yeah.
And
are there more specific disabilities, for example, hearing impairment, like cerebral palsy, or speech and language impairment?
It is actually particularly suitable for, yes, as you say, a number of specific diagnoses and people with them, because in some cases, due to the simplicity and accessibility of the symbols themselves, there are also a number of people with autism or autistic spectrum disorders can benefit greatly from the use of signing and symbols to give them information as well as for them to communicate. So in some cases they may not want to sign, but they may benefit greatly from the use of symbols to provide them with information for them to make choices from. There's from timetabling through to labeling through to PECS, so the picture exchange communication system. Yes,
and developing their vocabulary as well.
Very much so, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
for children who have language delays, for example.
Yes, certainly for language delays. I believe one of the research papers on the Makaton website gives some is regarding foreign language acquisition and the use of signing with it, and how that helps with the retention of the new concepts if you do some signs too.
Yeah, I think I read that.
I think we all know as well that when you're teaching nursery rhymes and Christmas songs and things, if you do actions for them too, the children tends to stick better, and it's more dynamic, more motivating. So yes, it appeals across a great swathe of different groups of people and users, and is specifically helpful, as I say, for a number of different people because of the accessibility of it, and the spoken word order lends itself to just natural speech with the gestures to go along with it.
So I was quite surprised actually when I first went to schools in England, because I thought this was used for children who had some sort of speech and language or communication impairment. But I was quite surprised to see that all the teachers were using Makaton Signs in their classrooms, and the pictures were available on the walls as well. So I thought that was really nice. It's very inclusive, and it doesn't matter whether the child has a language difficulty or not, typically developing children were using signs with children who had language difficulties, so they could communicate via signs. And also it helps with their memory as well, because when the teacher was speaking and she was using the signs, they were receiving the information twice. So I thought that was really good, because I didn't see that in Australia. I only saw that in England. So I was quite impressed. Moving on.
Could I just come in with, because there's a question about how young you can start using it. And Makaton has developed a package of signing for babies. So, you know, we're talking about babies, literally. In our area that we've all, us three, have been working in, we were lucky to pilot the use of Makaton signing for babies. And how it worked was, we had health visitors who chose children, randomly invited children who fell between the age of about 5 months and 12 months to participate in these pilots. And it turned out that they were a random mixture of children who were neurologically normally developing children, and then some that it turned out were going to have some delays, and we didn't realize that to start with, but they were completely integrated groups. And it was amazing. I have to say, the first time I piloted it, I thought it was going to be disastrous. I thought, how on earth am I going to try and teach signs to parents and these squirming little babies on the floor who were all of the crawling
it froze.
It was more daunting than any adult class I've ever taken. But as soon as you started signing, when you were playing or when you were singing or when you were showing them something and you signed, all of these little squirmy things stopped and turned and made face-to-face contact. And they attended and they listened and they looked. And obviously at that age, they were not signing back. But the attention and listening and looking was phenomenal. And gesture developmentally occurs before speech. And so around about the 8-9 month age is when you would get the first deliberate gestures used generally. And so by the time we'd run these pilots, some of these children at the end of 5 or 6 sessions were beginning to use some early signing.
Really?
But
wow.
yes, it was incredible. And what I think, though, that I found most impressive was A, their attention spans, their attention skills, B, their social interaction that they started developing with the parents and the grandparents that came along, and the adult skills of interacting with their babies. And the feedback that we had afterwards was from all of them, it's like, oh, I didn't used to communicate nearly as much with my baby because they weren't responding back. They're not saying anything, so I wouldn't pursue. I'd say it once, but I wouldn't pursue it. But I've learnt that I can interact with my child all day, whatever we're doing, and I can use some signs with them, and their interaction skills have improved. And so there is no bottom age, really. I would say probably you need about 5 or 6 months, because then they can focus their attention and they can watch and listen to you and benefit from it. But no real lower age group. So it was amazing. Brilliant.
Can you tell me again the age group that you, the age of the children that were piloted?
We stipulated originally that we wanted 6 months to about 10 or 11 months. We wanted to catch them before they started walking, because once they're walking, that's all they want to do.
Yeah.
And they would just leave the group. So that wouldn't work. So we wanted to capture 6 months to about 10 or 11 months. In fact, we did have a child that came along who was 5 months old, but that was the youngest.
Okay.
And that age band was perfect. It just worked.
And how long did the pilot go for?
We ran 6 sessions, and there's a program to follow. So there are specific things that you teach the adult carers in each session, and you have a small vocabulary of signs that you teach them in each session, and you obviously demonstrate how to use it using nursery rhymes, songs, books, toys, playing peebo and hiding toys, and naming the toys using signs, etc., etc. So we ran 2 pilots of 6 sessions once a week for 6 weeks, and it's now something that has been rolled out and is used quite a lot. Not enough, in my opinion. I'd like all babes, all toddlers to experience it, because it's so brilliant. But yeah, it's being used quite a lot.
It's only the Makaton people who do that, or health visitors have been trained to do that when they go into homes?
Yeah, they have. Yes, some of them have. And we've had early years workers, sort of social care side and education side. So anybody that's involved with young children there is a little training. It's quite a short training. But yes, it's not just speech and language therapists doing it.
Okay, you definitely need to come to Mauritius next year to roll your baby program. All right.
Developments at the other end as well, with some the other end of the sort of your lifespan as well. There's some interesting use of signing happening with people with dementia and post-stroke rehabilitation. It's all quite current.
Yeah.
And I must admit, I do also, when I'm doing courses and training, I always make the analogy with things like road signs in terms of the symbols, because we all benefit from visual cueing.
Yeah.
And the symbols are particularly accessible because they are so like the sorts of signing and signage that we see in a very day-to-day way anyway, and increasingly so with things like the signs, the symbols on devices. So you know your play and fast forward and power and those kinds of, we're looking for those emblematic interpretations of concepts, and we all benefit from their use.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting, Mark. We'll move on to the next question. Sarah, you've already covered a little bit about development. The next question is, can the use of Makaton hinder the development of speech? I'm saying that because I've worked with many parents whose children were not speaking yet, and they did not want to teach or use Makaton Signs because they thought it would hinder their speech development, because I want my child to talk. And also, they did not want to attract attention on their child, because if your child is signing, it means he has some sort of disability, maybe he's deaf, and they didn't want their child to be associated with being deaf or having a hearing impairment, because they were hearing fine, and they did not want to attract attention on them with the signing. So can the use of Makaton hinder the development of speech?
No.
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 I can't say it enough. Absolutely not.
Yeah. So
what
would you tell a parent? if that was one of their concerns.
Have I frozen there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So what would you
Okay.
tell a parent if
well,
that was brought to you?
What would I tell a parent? I have to say, when I started using Makaton, which is too long ago to tell you, that was the response that we got from parents here.
And we still do.
And it was also the response that I got. Yes, yes. It's a lot less, I can assure you. I also used to get the same response from some professionals as well, which was even more frustrating.
Yeah.
But it is much less now because it's become much more acceptable, mainstream, and it's on the telly, and there are programs for the children that use it. So it's much more acceptable, and that question doesn't crop up as much. But what I would say to them is that if they were into research, I've sent you some references. There's lots of things you can read about it.
Yeah.
But basically, gesture is, as we've just talked about, a normal stage of development for all children. It occurs before you get to speech. So it's perfectly natural that children gesture. And you can say to parents, you know, you wave at your baby, don't you? Or your baby points for something, or reaches out, or they lift their arms up to be picked up. It's natural stage of development, and all you're doing is kind of extending that and giving them more options of things to say. What happens if an adult is signing to a child, they tend to slow their speech down. Because if you're signing, you need to slow down what you're saying in order to remember to get the signs in.
Yeah.
Actually slowing your speech down for children helps to separate the words, helps the children to be able to hear where a word begins and ends and the sounds that are involved with it. Rather than what we usually do is sort of blah, 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 blah. And a child with speech sound problems or language development problems has no idea how that is made up of different units. And when you slow down your speech and sign, it helps them to listen to and be able to pick out beginnings and ends of words, the sounds that are involved, all the different components of the language. So that's one thing. There's research to show that the areas in the brain that control movement of the hands and the areas that control movement of the face and the mouth and the lips and the tongue are adjacent to each other and have pathways linking the two areas. And this is why they think that with a young child, gesture develops alongside attempts to speech. And when they're very young, it's babbling. So the association between the movements of the hands, gestures, and the sounds that are made with the mouth, there is these links. So it is felt that actually encouraging them to use gestures and encouraging them to use signs encourages them to vocalize. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to get all the speech sounds perfect to start with, but there is that link there. Some of the research shows that the earlier you can introduce the use of formalized gesture, signing, Makaton, the better, because children naturally can synchronize what they do with their hands and what comes out of their mouth. Now, when, and I'm sure Mark will agree with this, that when you're trying to teach adults to learn signing and learn Makaton, one of the things that crops up in pretty much every class you take is that while the adults are concentrating on what their hands should be doing, they stop talking. They forget to say the word. And you have to spend, you just so many times you go, don't forget to talk, don't forget to speak as you sign, because they're so focused on what am I supposed to do with my hands? I've got to try and remember, and they forget to speak. Children don't have that problem. The skills are being learned at the same time and they're being synchronized at the same time. And so all of that helps to get them to practice speech sounds, even if they're not perfect, to get them to attempt spoken words because they're gesturing and signing at the same time. So in all the years that I have used Makaton, and like Mark, I think I use Makaton every day with every child or adult I ever worked with in some shape or form. To some degree, I'm using it all the time. And in all those years, I only ever came across one incident where a teacher in a special school said to me, I told you this Makaton wouldn't work. I've been using it with this girl and she stopped speaking. Oh, I thought, oh, you know, how come this has happened? It was a young girl with Down syndrome and she was about 9 and she did have speech and she'd got quite a good vocabulary of single words. She wasn't really linking words together, but she'd got a good useful vocabulary of single words. And I asked this teacher to show me what had happened, and the teacher demonstrated the fact that she was showing her flashcards. So let me just illustrate. So not like this, these are symbols, but she got pictures and she held it up, didn't speak to the girl. And the girl went, which is the sign in our Makaton for fruit. Teacher didn't say anything. She turned over and showed her another picture. And the girl went,
yeah.
And it was a silent conversation. And I said, well, you're demonstrating to her that you don't want her to talk. So that was the only example ever I've had of a child who didn't do the opposite, who didn't progress with their speech and language.
Interesting. Oh, well. All right. Next question. For children who are born with a hearing impairment, do you think it's a good approach to start with Makaton Signs first and then move on to sign language, or should parents favor sign language only from the very beginning?
Okay, and I think I was talking to you about this yesterday. It depends very much on the situation of that child. So I'm just going to ask a few questions. It's like, has that child been born into a deaf family so that the parents are deaf and will be using sign language? They will be using their own sign language, whether it's British, American, Mauritian. They will be signing to each other. And if that child comes along and is diagnosed with a hearing impairment, then definitely I would say that child needs to start off straight away with the sign language that they're going to be using in the family. And presumably the child will also, if it's a child with a significant hearing loss, will have to be taught in a specialist unit or school, and will probably be taught, although they'll be taught some formal language when it comes to written work, they will be using their own natural sign language. If it's a child who's got a hearing impairment, but actually maybe they've got aids and maybe they can hear a certain element of speech, and they've been born to a family where spoken language is being used, and they're hearing it in spoken word order, as we were talking about early on. For a start, it would be almost impossible for that family to become natural users of sign language effectively and spontaneously, because it is so different. But also that child is more likely to have to learn language in the spoken word order. And therefore I would be using signs along with spoken word order, spoken language, and therefore Makaton.
Okay. How about if the child has hearing aids and cochlear implant afterwards, and they are going, for sure, they are going to a deaf school, but the parents speak spoken language. What do you think the parents should do?
Tricky. That is tricky. I mean, if they're hearing parents that are using spoken language, if the child goes to a special school for hearing impaired, they will see all their textbooks, all the stuff that's written for them, all the stuff on computers will be written in spoken word order. That sort of a child, I mean, we've got loads of children obviously in the same situation here. They will use their own sign language with their peers. So they will just kind of develop their own use of signs without speech amongst their peers, amongst other deaf people. And as they grow up, socially, they will be using sign language amongst the deaf community. But they will need to have signs shown to them in spoken word order, whichever system they're going to be using. I mean, over here, it might not be Makaton. If they go to a school that's specifically for hearing impaired, they would be taught something probably that's called signed English, which is a sort of higher level than Makaton, insofar as it is in the spoken word order. It is signing on top of speech, but they'd probably use more concepts signed than your general Makaton user. But it is very similar. And you can take Makaton. I've used Makaton at that level with users who've started off with Makaton just using initially single words, single signs, then building up to just keywords. But ultimately, the child has progressed to a level where they're needing to learn language in more detail. And maybe they're learning to read, and so they've got all these other words that they need to learn. And you can use Makaton at a full grammatical level to support those children's language development.
Okay, really good. Next big question, still for you, Sarah.
Oh, so, right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark.
It's quite all right. I'm learning too.
Mark is going to take over at the end. All right. In a culturally diverse country such as Mauritius, where the official language is English and the school curriculums are in English, but where the people speak in French, Creole, Hindi, and other dialects, in which language do you think the speech therapist should teach Makaton in Mauritius?
Okay, I think Makaton is the perfect solution to that scenario, because once you've agreed a standardized vocabulary of signs that you're going to use under Makaton umbrella, it doesn't matter what language you're using, you will be using the same signs. So as long as, the important thing here is that you have to agree that that standardized set of vocabulary that you're going to introduce is acceptable to all those cultures.
And not offensive.
And not offensive. And that's really the process that I did have to, so I'll go back to South Africa now. So when I went to South Africa, they have got 9 different sign languages, according to the different groups, cultural groups out there. And I worked with an amazingly knowledgeable signing advisor who knew all of those sign languages, and therefore could advise me as to which signs we could agree in this standardized vocabulary. And the sign language that was in most prevalent use there was Afrikaans. So the majority of the signs that we selected ended up as being Afrikaans, because it was agreed that actually those were acceptable to all the cultural groups. And then when there were ones that weren't acceptable, we had to look at signs from the other 8 sign languages and go, okay, so what wouldn't be offensive? What could we use that everybody would be happy with, that isn't going to offend everybody? And so that would happen, and that's how we put our vocabulary together. But once you've got that, you see, you can use it, whether you're speaking in French to the children and teaching them, doing speech therapy, or teaching with them in French, you're going to be using the same signs. Whether you're in school and you're teaching them in English, you'll still use the same signs. They can go home and speak whatever is the language at home, and you can still be using the same signs. It is a brilliant bridge to different languages. And I think I was telling you the other day about a school that we had in East Sussex, where it was a mainstream school. The age of the children was 5 to 11, and it didn't have particular unit for children with difficulties of any kind. But there were 23 different first languages used amongst the children within that school. And the headmaster was just so ahead of his time. It was unbelievable. He knew about Makaton, he'd used Makaton, and he decided to introduce Makaton, key concepts, to be used throughout the entire school, because it meant that these children who were coming into the classrooms and couldn't communicate with their peers initially because they all spoke different languages, could use Makaton to bridge those gaps, and also to help them to learn English. So it is the perfect bridge.
So you reckon I could potentially use French Makaton or English Makaton signs and pictures and talk, so use the same signs and pictures across the board at home and at school and in my speech therapy sessions. And then, for example, I could be using English spoken language with them in my sessions, and then the parents could be using French or Creole or Hindi at home, as long as the signs are not offensive and are acceptable in all languages. Brilliant.
That's right. But what you do need to do is to have that, you need to have some input to gauge from a sign language expert, a Mauritius sign language expert, to be able to give you that information as to what would be acceptable and what wouldn't.
Gotcha.
So that you've got your own core of vocabulary that you'll then use. And it will be the same signs that are used, as you say, wherever. Whatever language you're speaking, you use the same signs.
Okay, brilliant. We've got one question here. How will Makaton support non-verbal children with autism that don't appear to attend? Either you or Mark. I know Mark has experience.
How about you, Mark? Have a go.
I could have a go at that one. I've certainly come across situations where children appear not to be attending, especially children with autism, but they are actually focusing on you in other ways. So they may not be looking at you, but they may be listening to you. And the same can be true expressively. So they may not want to communicate by signing, but they may very well be able to manipulate symbols, arrange them. They may negotiate the timetable. So they might go up to the timetable and put, snack time, because they love eating biscuits. But you're engaged then in a communicative process using the symbols as part of Makaton. I'm not sure that answers your question directly, but it's by way of an example. It certainly can help in those situations. It is literally another string to your bow. It's another way to communicate. I mentioned earlier on about total communication. As I say, it's an alternative. You're providing an array of additional tools that are used together as Makaton, which people can dip in and out of as much to, as they are able or wish to, because some of that non-attending is quite definitely it's a choice thing. They may, some people may be avoiding the face-to-face eye contact aspects of typical communication because they have a communication difficulty. But if you have other tools in the classroom or in their world that are generally being used, then, as I say, they're there to be used, and children and young people do pick up and use those tools, even if some of the more conventional communication methods are avoided, or they're felt to be confrontational, or they cause somebody distress. Is that does that cover the question?
I
It's
think
certainly
so.
something I've found.
Yeah.
Again,
I just remembered something that you said, Mark, when we were running the visual clinics together, because we had many children with autism coming into those visual clinics and who did not attend. They were hyperactive. And sometimes parents felt that it was a waste of a session because the child did not attend to anything that we were doing. But you would always say, well, as you just mentioned, with Makaton, it's not just signing, we're also talking. So even though they're not attending to us and looking at us directly, they are hearing it. And once they are moving, like even a fleeting moment where their eyes are up, they are seeing part of the sign, so that they are in some ways learning. So we have to keep speaking and signing at the same time throughout the day, and possibly every time that we're speaking to them. Nadine, let's see.
Yes, there's a fantastic comment from Nadine, and I would say, yeah, I would support that. I've had parents who were very dubious about using signing with their autistic child, and then after quite a period of time of all the adults using signing around them, and it appearing that they're not taking a scrap of notice of what you're doing, they could then suddenly come out with something and would sign something because they're desperate and they want it, and they've been taking it in all the time, but it's just done through peripheral vision and listening and watching and looking at the symbols and all the rest of it. So there was I think it was Rita Jordan, who was one of the autism sort of gurus, really, who originally was quite anti the thought of using signing with people on the spectrum, but ultimately wrote a paper that said she changed her mind and that actually it was really, really useful, and she'd seen lots of examples where children had benefited from people signing around them, even though it looked like they weren't taking any notice.
I had an example in a school minibus once as well, when there were the child wasn't a signer themselves, but we did sign to them. They weren't verbal either, and probably through choice. I believe they'd end up speaking years down the line, but at the time they weren't speaking. And I remember we were on our way to or from swimming, and it was quite cold, and the windows in the minibus had steamed up, and the child actually drew a symbol from memory on the window of the minibus in the condensation, and thereby opened a communication, in a
wow. That's pretty amazing.
Lovely.
Yeah, I think we just froze. Mark, are you still here?
Situation where there was no. Have I disappeared?
Yeah. Go on.
You're back.
You're back. Go on.
Oh, phew. Oh, well, yes. I don't want to be missing.
we have a couple more questions to go through. Quickly, Mark, how to start using Makaton?
Okay, I can do that one very quickly. It is very straightforward. It is just to keep it fun, to provide lots of opportunities. You need to, it's important that you decide on just a few important concepts to begin with, and focus on them repeatedly throughout the setting, the day, in maybe labeling the environment, maybe timetabling, and to promote maybe giving as well as receiving information. So, you know, they're there to be, you know, the symbols are available to be given to you, or the signs can be, you know, given to you, so to speak, by the user, as well as you using with them. But that's more or less it, to be honest, is use it as much as possible, keep it fun, provide encouragement and praise when they're used as well, and just as we've said repeatedly, always speak as you sign, and use the concepts or the symbols.
I think a good way to start.
Apart from persevere, just keep going, and you'll get it. Yeah.
A good place to start is to find something that's absolutely motivating for that child, so that they want to ask for it, or they want to tell you about it. And once you've got one or two things like that, that you can repeatedly use, as Mark says, in every part of the day, another great one is to be able to sign more, because that can be used for anything. So if they like you singing a song, you can demonstrate that after you've finished, you sign more, and then it happens again. Or if they want another drink or another biscuit, or they want you to rough and tumble again, or they want you to bounce them up and down again, anything that they like, if you can teach them the sign for more and reward it, that's a great one to start with.
Totally.
Brilliant. Mark, did you want to teach us some basic Makaton signs?
Yes.
Yeah. Should we all practice? Got my head.
Are we going to be able to see people? Are they going to put their cameras on?
They can if they wish.
Themselves?
They can if they wish.
Would be good to see people.
Yeah. Okay, so teach us how to say hello.
Okay, I'm going to have to put the mic down
for
the sign. So
all right, I'll talk for you, Mike.
Talk for me.
Yes, but bear in mind this is British signing, British Makaton.
Yes, absolutely. We did speak briefly, didn't we, Christie? I said that maybe we should be teaching Namaste rather than hello.
No, we say bonjour here. Not really Namaste.
Okay, Sarah, you can take over with the speaking.
Okay, you sign and I'll interpret, as long as I can read your signs. Hello.
Oops,
hello.
Hello.
Hello. So yeah, hello.
Hello.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. That's what you do anyway over here.
Yeah.
Just wave. Goodbye. Please.
Please.
Long, slow movement, please. And thank you is a short, quick movement. Thank you. And don't forget to speak. I can see some of you not moving your lips.
Thank you.
Hungry. Can you move to your left, Mark? Move to your left a little bit. That's it.
That's a good one to learn. I'm always hungry.
That's a fist shape, rubbing your tummy. Hungry. Thirsty. So that's index finger and thumb. showing you've got a dry throat. Thirsty. Some of you are still not talking.
Thirsty.
I can see you, you see. This is why we need the cameras on.
Sorry, Sarah. Thirsty.
Good, thank you. That's good. I want. So it's saying I want.
I want.
Pain.
Pain.
So, and you can put that in the area where the pain is. Pain.
Headache.
Yeah. So it's facial expression you need with that as well. Don't grin if you've got pain.
Yeah. What's that?
Oh, right, you're going to do toilet.
Oh,
Toilet.
Toilet.
Okay, so that's your middle finger touching toilet.
Toilet.
Happy. Happy.
Happy. I think
Now,
Mark likes to say not to do the smearing gesture for that one.
yes. And also, again, this is one that culturally is not acceptable over here if you've got your thumbs separate. So you need your thumbs gripped to your fingers.
Happy.
Happy. It might not be a problem over there, but we can't do it over here.
Okay. Thumbs together, guys.
Sad. Sad. Again, with a suitable facial expression and also saying the word.
Sad.
Thank you.
Was that all? Do you want
Are
to
you gonna
do the Christmas signs?
Nice.
do some Christmassy ones?
I'll carry straight on, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the Christmas signs. Because it's the Christmas season.
Christmas.
Christmas. Christmas.
Christmas.
Christmas. Okay.
That's it. So it's flat hand and then turns into a fist on top. Christmas.
Is that right, Sarah? Is that pulling
It
the
is.
paper back and exposing the present?
Well, no, there's all sorts of stories to that one.
No.
Yeah. And yours is a new one. I haven't heard that version.
Well, I'm going to stick with it because it helps me to remember.
Yes, okay. Christmas. Christmas tree.
Christmas tree. Christmas tree. Okay.
Christmas tree. What else have you got? Oh, happy Christmas.
Happy. Oh, thumbs together.
Thumbs. Yeah.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. Yeah, good.
Christmas.
Present.
Present. Do it again.
Wrap up the sides, wrap up the front and back, and tie a bow.
Oh, okay.
Present.
Present. That's a good one for the children to remember.
Toys. I think you're going to do, aren't you?
Toys.
Toys. That's a letter T
Toys.
from our alphabet. You make a letter T, and then you do a
Toys.
circular, couple of circles for toys.
Toys.
Fun. Fun.
Can you do that again? Yeah.
So it's that shaped hand.
Yeah.
Fun.
Oh, okay. Fun.
Fun. It's linked in with sort of smiley faces, making a big smile on your face. Fun.
Expression is important there as well.
Facial expression. Father Christmas.
Father Christmas.
So a long beard
Oh,
and a sack over his shoulder. Father Christmas. Is that it? I think that's it.
That's all that's on the list.
think
Was that
that's
Yeah.
okay?
all. Yep, that was all. Brilliant. Nearly done, guys. So where can we find more information about Makaton?
Oh, well, lots of places. Certainly the website would be absolutely one of the first ports of call, unless you've got any tame speech therapists and assistants you can call on and
Yes, I can.
have all your questions answered. Definitely. I mean, the website's been revamped in the last over the last year or so, and they are really being very much more accessible, and everything is available there to download or to view. And there's a number of different options by way of starting memberships and so on, so you can actively, get more access to additional materials and so on. But there's a wealth of free materials on the website, and information and research papers and so on. As I say, anybody who's been trained should be able to direct you to further sources of information as well. So other therapists, or as we've mentioned, early years workers, people in ISEND and CLASS and some of those other organisations. There's also obviously other media platforms. So YouTube has there is a Makaton channel on YouTube, which is certainly a good place to look, particularly for things like Sign of the Week, which is a concept that they pick each week, and you can just go on there to watch somebody signing that particular concept. But there's some others too, and they also provide links to other people's channels, which they're sort of endorsed by the charity. So things like Mr. Tumble, Something Special. There's a particularly nice musical one called Singing Hands, where there's a lot of nursery rhymes, but also some some pop songs and things that are culturally, they're just social norms. They're just the things you'll hear on the radio and stuff too, which is quite nice. Who else to go to? I think that's
it.
Yeah,
that's enough for me, I think.
Okay.
Who have I missed, Sarah?
No, I think you've covered everything. Just the website is makaton.org. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Have a look.
Okay. Last question, and then the people can ask us more questions. Can people from overseas access the training online? And what are the different levels of training available? And roughly how much does it cost, if you know? Okay.
Yeah, all the Makaton's training since this year is now accessible online. Wasn't in the past, but of course this year is one of the kind of bonuses, if you like, is that every level of training is available online through Makaton. And yes, anybody can book onto it from anywhere. You go on the website and it says find workshops, and you can book onto a workshop. I am going to say again what I said before Mark did his signing, and that is, of course, when you do workshops online through the Makaton charity, you will be getting British signs. And so, of course, you need to weigh up whether that's okay, whether that's what you want. The courses, the workshops will give you the sort of background, so you'll get all the information which is standard wherever you come from, so that's really useful, but you will be taught signs that come from British Makaton, so you need to just bear that in mind. The recommended price, whilst we're still in kind of semi-lockdown, is £69 UK for a workshop of the sort of new levels of workshop, of which there are 4 at the moment, which kind of takes you through the core vocabulary that Mark was talking about. So at the end of it, you know, 450 signs and 450 symbols.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of the theory that goes with it. And there are other workshops that you can access online as well. But each of those at the moment is recommended. The cost is 69 UK pounds. Although it is up to the tutors who run those courses, they are allowed to price it as they want. So if they've got additional expenses, it might be more expensive. Once we're out of the current dreadful situation, Makaton are talking about the fact that the recommended price will increase. I don't know what to, I'm afraid, but it will go up from £69.
Okay. I saw on the website that they have extra resources for French Makaton and Hindi Makaton as well. Do you know if the trainings are available in these languages?
Not from UK. There is quite an active group in France, and I don't know whether they're doing online training like the UK are, but I think you probably need to go via UK Makaton charity and ask them for links to the French group, the French Makaton group, which is quite a big active group, and they may well be doing the same. But the ones from this country are only being done in English.
Okay. Thank you so much. These were all my questions. So now I pass the floor to our listeners. Thank you. Does anyone have any question?
There's a
Nadine
question about how
do you need to become a trainer?
Okay, so what you would need to do to become a trainer is you have to go through all those workshops through the basic levels to learn the core vocabulary. So you have to have done that first, and also to have been using it in a practical situation for a while, and then you need to have a recommendation, somebody to kind of support you, to say, yes, you've attended those trainings, yes, you have been using it in a functional way with children or adults, and yes, I think that it would be useful for you to go further and train. And then you can attend a training course, which for the first time this year, again, we've done online, which was interesting because, as Mark referred to earlier, it used to be a residential course for a week, and although it's really intensive, and it is an assessed course, you need to know that, because obviously we need a standard of tutors out there, so you can't just go, oh, I think I'll be a tutor. So you have to pass various assessments, and it used to be 4.5 days residential. And this year we've been trialing online, 4-day online, but because they are kind of shorter days, because you can't be on the screens for as long, for as many hours during the day, there's quite a lot of pre-course reading and preparation of work, and then you come and you do your 4 shorter days, and then there is post-course work to do after that as well. So it's quite a lengthy process, but I'm sure Mark would agree that it's, you know, if you're keen and you're enthusiastic and you think you want to spread the word and you want to be able to train people and help parents and other professionals, it's absolutely worthwhile.
It's incredibly rewarding. Yeah, I know people. I was one of the few people there that haven't actually been to a university, and there were lots of people there who said it was more intense than, you know, some of their final years at uni and and so on. But it was the sense of reward at the end, and feeling part of literally something special. is really quite something. It is, you know, it's a bit of an honour. Thank you.
Yes, you definitely earn your stripes doing a Makaton tutor training course.
You really do. You really do. But that's what makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely. Mm.
I had a question whether I'm going to use Makaton in Mauritius or not. So I just said I'm not as proficient as you guys yet. I know a little bit. I'm still a beginner myself, but I certainly will be using some of the signs to do things like PECS and very basic signs that Mark taught me during our visual clinic days. Anybody else have any more questions? Otherwise, we are going to finish the talk. No. So my question is, when are you guys coming to Mauritius?
As soon as they let us out.
And you let us in.
Oh, Nadine has asked about thoughts about using Makaton PECS. Yes, all the time.
I did this afternoon.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, PECS, people tend to think of PECS as having its, you know, is a system that you can't use other symbols with, because PECS comes with its own symbols. But you can use anything for PECS. You can use objects, you can use photos, you can use coloured pictures, and of course we use Makaton symbols, and we sign at the same time. So absolutely, definitely. I never used PECS without using Makaton.
Great question, Nadine. Any more questions?
With English as an additional language is the other question, and yeah, same thing. Bit like the multilingual school idea, really. So certainly teaching English as an additional language, with lots of instances of where using Makaton has helped to do that bridging and to teach them. There's this sign which is easier to remember. It's visual, and you learn visually generally much easier, and therefore I've introduced that sign or that symbol, but I've actually used an English word with it that you're unfamiliar with, and they just get used to you know, linking it with the visual symbol and the sign. Definitely good idea.
So very appropriate to the Mauritian population.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's all. So thank you, Mark and Sarah.
Woo, very good.
See you soon. Happy Christmas.
Yes.
And you didn't teach us Happy New Year, so Happy New Year. And I will see you in the new year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
So that's new, and then you make a Y on the back of your hand for year.
Yeah.
Happy New
Year. Thank you so much.
It's been really good to talk to you all. It's been great.
I've learned a lot. Thank you for sparing some time and for being my very first guest on speech therapy.
Well done, Christie. Thank you for asking us.
Thank you. I hope to see you soon in person in Mauritius, and it will be my pleasure to host you. I will find people for you to train.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah. And I think the baby program would be really good as well.
Yeah. It is. It's sensational. It's really magical.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Sounds great. All right. I will.
Lovely to see you all. Thank you for being a very attentive audience.
Some great questions.
Right.
Yeah, good questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And this now. Thank you all for coming. Bye.
Bye.